The mining station Kepler 442b hung in the darkness like a broken tooth, its hull scarred by meteor impacts and solar radiation. Zara pressed her face against the cold viewport, watching the stars that had become her prison. Her daughter Mira slept fitfully in the corner, wrapped in thermal blankets that had seen better days. 3 months had passed since the evacuation ships left without them. 3 months since the hegemony declared their sector cursed and abandoned everyone who couldn't pay the extraction fees. Zara's husband had died in the mining accident that triggered the evacuation, leaving her with nothing but debts and a child to protect. The station's life support systems groaned and wheezed, running on emergency power that wouldn't last much longer. Food synthesizers had failed weeks ago, leaving them to survive on whatever rations they could scavenge from abandoned quarters. Water recycling was at 30% efficiency and dropping daily. Zara checked the long-range communications array again, though she knew it was pointless. The hegemony had cut all official channels, and the few merchant vessels that passed through the system ignored their distress signals. Who would risk dealing with cursed colonists? The superstition ran deep among the galaxy's spacefaring races. "Mama, I'm hungry," Mira whispered, her voice barely audible in the thin air. Zara knelt beside her 8-year-old daughter, forcing a smile she didn't feel. "I know, sweetheart. Let me see what I can find." The storage compartments yielded half a protein bar and a pouch of reconstituted fruit paste. Zara gave both to Mira, ignoring her own gnawing hunger. She had been rationing their remaining supplies carefully, but even the most optimistic calculations showed they had perhaps 2 weeks left. Outside the viewport, something caught her attention. A distant speck of light moved against the stellar background, growing slowly larger. Zara's heart raced as she activated the station's passive sensors, afraid to hope. The signature was unlike anything in the hegemony database, angular and primitive-looking compared to the sleek curves of galactic standard vessels. The ship appeared to be scanning the station, taking its time to analyze the structure. Zara held her breath, waiting for it to move on like all the others. Instead, it changed course and began a slow approach vector. Her hands shook as she powered up the communications array, praying the unknown vessel would respond. "Unknown ship, this is Kepler Station. We are civilians in distress. 2 survivors aboard, including 1 child. Please respond." Static filled the channel for long minutes. Then a voice crackled through, speaking in accented galactic standard. "Kepler Station, this is Captain Marcus Chen of the independent vessel Defiance. We copy your distress signal. Are you in immediate danger?" Zara nearly sobbed with relief. "Yes, Captain. Life support is failing, and we have limited food and water. We've been stranded here for 3 months. Stand by, Kepler Station. We're going to dock and assess your situation." The ship that approached was unlike anything Zara had seen before. Its hull was a patchwork of different metals and armor plates, clearly built for function rather than aesthetics. Weapon mounts bristled along its sides, and its engines glowed with an intense blue light that hurt to look at directly. As the docking clamps engaged with a reverberating clang, Zara gathered Mira in her arms. The child was weak from malnutrition but alert enough to be frightened by the sounds of the airlock cycling. The inner door hissed open, revealing 2 figures in environmental suits. The first removed their helmet, revealing features Zara had only seen in historical archives and banned xenological texts. The being was tall and bipedal, with pale skin, brown hair, and startling blue eyes. A human, one of the mythical Deathworlders from the Galactic Rim. "I'm Captain Chen," the human said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "This is my first officer, Lieutenant Rodriguez." The second human removed her helmet, revealing dark skin and kind eyes that immediately focused on Mira. "Thank the void," Zara breathed. "I thought we were going to die here." Captain Chen's expression hardened as he scanned the deteriorating station. "How long since the evacuation?" 3 months. "The hegemony abandoned us when the mining operation was declared cursed. My husband died in the accident, and I couldn't afford passage for myself and my daughter." The captain's jaw tightened. "Cursed?" "Superstition," Lieutenant Rodriguez said quietly. "Common among the core worlds when dealing with outer rim colonies." Zara watched the humans examine their surroundings with professional efficiency. They moved with a confidence she hadn't seen in other species, unafraid of the cursed station or its supposed supernatural taint. Captain Chen pulled out a handheld scanner and began taking readings. "Your life support will fail completely within 48 hours, he announced. We need to get you both off this station immediately. We have no money, Zara said desperately. No way to pay for passage. Captain Chen looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Payment wasn't mentioned in your distress call, was it? He turned to his first officer. Rodriguez, get our medical kit and some emergency rations. I want them checked out before we move them to the ship. As the lieutenant worked, Captain Chen knelt beside Mira, speaking to her in a gentle tone. What's your name, little one? Mira, the child whispered. That's a beautiful name. We're going to take you somewhere safe, okay? Mira nodded, and Zara felt tears streaming down her face. After months of hopelessness, these strange humans had appeared like guardian angels from the void. The medical examination revealed severe malnutrition and dehydration, but nothing that couldn't be treated. As they prepared to transfer to the human ship, Zara asked the question that had been burning in her mind. Why are you helping us? Everyone else just ignored our signals. Captain Chen paused in the airlock, his blue eyes reflecting depths of emotion Zara couldn't fathom. Because leaving people to die when you have the power to save them isn't just wrong, it's unforgivable. Where we come from, we have a saying, no one gets left behind. As they boarded the Defiance, Zara carried Mira into a new chapter of their lives, not knowing that their rescue would set in motion events that would challenge the very foundations of galactic civilization. The humans had found them, but more importantly, they had found the humans at a time when the galaxy desperately needed to remember what it meant to be truly alive. The medical bay aboard the Defiance hummed with advanced technology that seemed both familiar and alien to Zara. Dr. Sarah Kim, the ship's physician, worked with practiced efficiency as she administered IV fluids and nutrients to both mother and daughter. Unlike the sterile automated medical facilities Zara knew from hegemony space, this felt personal and caring. Your daughter will recover fully, Dr. Kim assured Zara, checking the monitors surrounding Mira's bed. Malnutrition is serious, but we caught it in time. She's young and strong. Zara watched her daughter sleep peacefully for the first time in months, color already returning to her pale cheeks. I can't thank you enough. All of you. Thank us by getting better, the doctor replied with a warm smile. Captain Chen wants to speak with you once you're feeling stronger. Nothing urgent, just some questions about the situation back there. The ship itself fascinated Zara. Unlike the cramped, efficiency-focused designs of hegemony vessels, the Defiance felt lived in and personal. Crew members had decorated their quarters with artwork, photographs, and mementos from various worlds. The corridors were wider than necessary, with actual windows instead of just view screens. When Zara felt strong enough to walk, Lieutenant Rodriguez gave her a tour of the ship. They passed through a large common area where off-duty crew members played games, read, and socialized. The sight of people simply enjoying each other's company struck Zara as remarkable after months of isolation. Your ship is beautiful, Zara commented as they paused by a large observation deck. The captain designs all our modifications himself, Rodriguez explained with obvious pride. He believes a ship should be a home, not just a machine. Most of our crew are refugees like yourself, people the galaxy has written off. They entered the bridge where Captain Chen stood studying a three-dimensional star chart. The holographic display showed their current position on the outer rim, far from any major trade routes or hegemony patrol zones. Feeling better? Chen asked without turning around. Much thanks to your crew. Dr. Kim says Mira will make a full recovery. Good. He gestured to the star chart. I need to ask you about the mining operation on Kepler Station. What exactly happened during the accident? Zara recalled the terrible day 3 months ago. The miners broke through into an underground cavern system. There was some kind of gas release, toxic to most species. 7 people died immediately, including my husband. The hegemony investigators claimed the planet was cursed and ordered immediate evacuation. Cursed how? Ancient burial grounds, they said. Disturbed spirits causing equipment failures and bringing bad luck. It's an old superstition among the Zalani who originally surveyed the system. Captain Chen's expression darkened. And the evacuation ships? Only took passengers who could pay premium rates. Emergency surcharges, they called them. I was a miner's widow with no credits and a child. They said we could work off our passage, but the contracts were essentially slavery. The captain's knuckles whitened as he gripped the edge of the console. How many others were left behind? I don't know exactly. Maybe 40 or 50 people across the various mining platforms. Families mostly like us. Rodriguez leaned forward. Captain, that's a significant population. Indeed it is. Chen turned to face Zara directly. Would you be willing to help us find them? Zara felt a chill of fear mixed with hope. Find them? You mean go back? I mean rescue them. All of them. But the hegemony has declared the system off limits. Any ship caught there faces impoundment and criminal charges. Captain Chen's smile was cold and predatory. The hegemony can kiss my exhaust trail. What they've done is murder by neglect, and I don't recognize their authority to abandon civilians to die. Over the following days, as Mira recovered her strength, Zara learned more about the extraordinary crew of the Defiance. They were all human, refugees from a dozen different conflicts and disasters across the galaxy. Each had been failed by the established powers and found a new family among these Deathworlders from humanity's scattered colonies. Chief Engineer Williams had been blacklisted from hegemony space for refusing to design weapon systems that violated sentient rights. Communications Officer Thompson was an ex-hegemony Navy officer who had been court-martialed for helping civilian refugees escape a war zone. Dr. Kim had lost her medical license for treating aliens during a plague outbreak, violating quarantine protocols to save lives. They were outcasts and rebels, but Zara had never encountered people with such unwavering moral conviction. When they learned about the abandoned miners, the entire crew volunteered for what was essentially a suicide mission into forbidden space. Why do this? Zara asked Captain Chen as they watched Mira playing with some of the younger crew members in the common area. You could all live quiet lives somewhere safe. Could we? Chen replied thoughtfully. Could you look at yourself in the mirror every day knowing you had the power to save lives and chose not to use it? That's not living, that's just existing. The captain activated a wall display showing detailed schematics. We've been monitoring hegemony communications about the Kepler system. They've posted warning buoys and declared it a navigation hazard. But there are no active patrols. The superstition works in our favor. What about the curse? Zara asked, then immediately felt foolish for the question. Zara, my species evolved on a planet where nearly everything was trying to kill us. We have volcanoes, earthquakes, hurricanes, and predators that would give a hegemony admiral nightmares. If there's something supernatural on Kepler 442b, it's going to have to get in line behind all the natural things that want us dead. His confidence was infectious, but Zara still worried. The mining platforms are scattered across 3 different continents. Some might not have any survivors left. Then we'll honor their memory and make sure this never happens again, Lieutenant Rodriguez interjected. But we won't assume they're dead until we know for certain. As the Defiance adjusted course toward the Kepler system, Zara felt a mixture of terror and hope unlike anything she had experienced. These humans were attempting something that defied all logic and self-preservation instincts. They were returning to a cursed world to save people they had never met, expecting no reward beyond the knowledge that they had done the right thing. Watching them work together with such dedication and purpose, Zara began to understand why the galaxy's established powers feared humanity. It wasn't their Deathworld origins or their stubborn nature. It was their refusal to accept that some people were simply expendable, their unwillingness to let injustice stand unchallenged. The humans had found her and Mira in their darkest hour, but now Zara realized they might be something much more significant than saviors. They might be the catalyst for change that a complacent galaxy desperately needed. The Kepler system looked exactly as Zara remembered it, a collection of barren worlds orbiting a dying orange star. Warning buoys floated in regular patterns, broadcasting automated messages about navigation hazards and hegemony interdiction orders. The Defiance slipped past them like a ghost, its advanced stealth systems rendering it nearly invisible to conventional sensors. Captain Chen had spent days planning their approach with military precision. The ship's computer displayed a tactical overview of all 17 mining platforms scattered across Kepler 442b's 3 continents. Each installation was analyzed for life support status, structural integrity, and probable survivor counts based on evacuation records. Platform 7 shows the strongest biosignatures, reported Communications Officer Thompson from her station. I'm reading at least 12 distinct life forms, possibly more. That's where we start, Chen decided. Dr. Kim, prepare emergency medical supplies for immediate transport. Rodriguez, I want a full security detail ready in case we encounter hegemony patrols. Zara felt her stomach clench as the planet grew larger in the viewport. The mining platforms appeared as tiny specks of light against the brown and gray landscape. islands of failing technology in an ocean of toxic atmosphere. She knew that people like herself were down there, counting their final hours and waiting for deaths that might have already come. The approach to Platform 7 required careful navigation through the planet's turbulent upper atmosphere. The Defiance shuddered and groaned as it descended, but Captain Chen's piloting skills brought them safely to the landing pad outside the main habitat dome. Through the airlock window, Zara could see figures moving inside the platform's common area. Her heart leaped with recognition as she spotted several miners she had worked alongside before the disaster. They were alive, though clearly suffering from the same malnutrition and despair she had experienced. The docking procedure completed with mechanical precision, but the emotional reunion that followed was anything but mechanical. Zara watched through tears as the human crew members emerged from their ship like angels of mercy, carrying medical supplies and emergency rations to people who had given up all hope. Elder Kresh, the platform's senior administrator, was a proud Zilani who had served in the mining operations for over 30 years. His normally imposing stature was diminished by months of starvation, but his eyes blazed with renewed life as he gripped Captain Chen's hand. "Impossible," he whispered in his native language before switching to Galactic Standard. "The humans have come to the cursed world." "Curses don't scare us much," Chen replied with characteristic understatement. "How many people do you have here?" 15 adults, 6 children. We lost 3 people last month when the water recycling finally failed completely. Dr. Kim immediately began medical assessments while her team distributed food and fresh water. The difference in the survivors was immediate and dramatic. Children who had been listless and withdrawn began to show curiosity about their rescuers. Adults who had been preparing for death started asking questions about escape and safety. But Chen was already planning the next phase of their mission. "We can't take everyone at once," he explained to Elder Kresh. "The Defiance has limited passenger capacity, and we need to reach the other platforms before their life support fails." "Other platforms?" Kresh looked stunned. "You're going to attempt to rescue everyone?" "That's the plan." The Elder's expression shifted from gratitude to something approaching religious awe. "Captain, my people have legends about the humans, warriors from the death worlds who appear when all hope is lost. I thought they were just stories told to frighten children." "We're not mythological figures," Chen replied firmly. "We're just people who refuse to let injustice stand." Over the next 6 hours, the Defiance's crew worked tirelessly to stabilize Platform 7's critical systems. Chief Engineer Williams performed miracles with failing machinery, extending life support capabilities that should have died weeks ago. The goal was to buy time while they attempted to reach other platforms. Platform 12 was their next target, located on the planet's smaller southern continent. The flight took them over vast mining scars that looked like infected wounds in the planet's crust. Zara stared down at the devastation and wondered how anyone could consider this place cursed when the real curse was the greed that had driven such destructive exploitation. They found Platform 12 in worse condition than 7. The habitat dome had partially collapsed, forcing the 8 survivors to crowd into a single pressurized chamber, no larger than a storage closet. When the rescue team broke through the emergency locks, they discovered a scene that would haunt Zara's dreams for years to come. A family of 4 had died just days earlier, their bodies still arranged respectfully in the corner by the 4 surviving adults. 2 small children clung to an elderly female who was clearly their grandmother, all 3 barely alive and suffering from severe dehydration. Dr. Kim's team worked frantically to stabilize the survivors, while Captain Chen coordinated the evacuation with military efficiency. But even his composure cracked when he knelt beside the grandmother, who pressed something into his hand with trembling fingers. "My granddaughter's doll," she whispered in broken Galactic Standard. She wanted the rescuers to have it, to remember her. Chen stared at the simple cloth toy, his jaw working with suppressed emotion. When he spoke, his voice was steady, but Zara could see the fury burning in his eyes. "We'll remember them all." The pattern repeated across 5 more platforms over the following 3 days. Each rescue revealed new horrors and new examples of people pushed beyond the limits of endurance. The Defiance became a floating hospital and refugee center, packed beyond capacity with survivors who oscillated between gratitude and shock. But the most significant discovery came at Platform 16, where they found something the hegemony investigators had missed entirely: The mining accident hadn't been caused by disturbing ancient burial grounds or supernatural forces. Elder Voss, the platform's chief geologist, showed them scanner readings that told a very different story. The toxic gas release wasn't random, he explained, his voice shaking with rage. These readings showed deliberate charges placed to breach the cavern system. Someone wanted those miners dead. Captain Chen studied the data with the intensity of a hunter tracking prey. Industrial sabotage? Worse than that. Corporate murder. The mining rights for this system were contested between 3 different companies. If the primary contractor suffered enough casualties, their license could be revoked and transferred to a competitor. Zara felt sick to her stomach as the implications became clear. You're saying my husband and the others were murdered for profit? I'm saying someone wanted this place declared cursed and abandoned so they could move in later without paying compensation to the original workers. Voss replied grimly. As they lifted off from Platform 16 with the last group of survivors, Captain Chen gathered his senior officers for a private meeting. Zara was invited to join them along with Elder Kresh and several other survivor leaders. We have a choice to make, Chen announced. We can quietly relocate all the survivors to safe colonies and pretend none of this ever happened. Or we can make sure the people responsible for this atrocity face justice. Elder Kresh spoke for them all. Captain, my people have a saying. Justice delayed is justice denied. If we remain silent, this will happen again to other innocents. Chen nodded grimly. Then we're going to need more than one ship. It's time to call in some favors and remind the galaxy what happens when you mess with people under human protection. The Frontier Haven was exactly the kind of place respectable galactic citizens pretended didn't exist. Built inside a hollowed-out asteroid on the edge of civilized space, it served as a neutral meeting ground for smugglers, mercenaries, political refugees, and anyone else the hegemony preferred to forget about. When the Defiance docked at its main port, word spread quickly that the infamous Captain Chen had arrived with a ship full of rescued miners. Zara walked through the station's chaotic marketplace with a mixture of fascination and fear. Beings from dozens of species haggled over everything from illegal weapons to exotic foods. While multiple languages created a constant background babble, Mira stayed close to her side, wide-eyed at the strange sights and sounds around them. Stay alert, but don't look threatening, Lieutenant Rodriguez advised, as they made their way toward the central hub. Haven has its own rules, and the penalty for breaking them is usually airlock without a suit. Captain Chen had arranged to meet with someone called the Broker, a mysterious figure who supposedly coordinated activities among the Rimworld's various human settlements. Zara had heard whispers about humanity's growing influence in the outer territories, but she had assumed they were just rumors spread by nervous hegemony officials. The meeting took place in a private chamber deep within the asteroid, accessed through multiple security checkpoints manned by heavily armed guards. The Broker turned out to be a middle-aged human woman with graying hair and eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of her surroundings. She wore simple spacer clothing, but something about her presence commanded immediate respect. Marcus, she greeted Captain Chen with genuine warmth. I heard about your rescue mission. 47 survivors from a supposedly cursed system. The news feeds are already spinning it as a miracle. It wasn't a miracle, Elena. It was murder for profit, and we have the evidence to prove it. The Broker's expression shifted to cold professionalism as Chen presented the geological data from Platform 16. She studied the readings with the expertise of someone who had seen similar atrocities before, her jaw tightening with each new detail. Meridian Corporation, she said finally. I recognize their signature techniques. They've been consolidating mining operations across this sector for the past 5 years, always using similar methods. How many other incidents? Rodriguez asked. At least 12 that we know of. Industrial accidents, equipment failures, mysterious plagues that force evacuations. Always followed by Meridian moving in to claim the abandoned facilities at discount prices. Zara felt rage building in her chest. How many people have died? Hundreds. Maybe thousands. The Broker's voice was matter-of-fact, but her eyes burned with suppressed fury. The hegemony knows what's happening, but Meridian has enough political influence to keep the investigations buried. Not anymore, Chen declared. Elena, I need ships. Good ones with crews who aren't afraid of a fight. You're talking about war, Marcus. Meridian has corporate security fleets, political protection, and enough credits to buy their way out of almost any trouble. They don't have us." The broker smiled, and Zara suddenly understood why nervous officials across the galaxy spoke of humans in hushed, frightened tones. "No, they don't. How many ships do you need?" Over the following days, Frontier Haven became a staging ground for something unprecedented in galactic history. Ship after ship arrived, each carrying human crews with their own grievances against the corporate powers that dominated civilized space. The assembled fleet included everything from converted cargo haulers to sleek military surplus vessels that bore the scars of forgotten conflicts. Captain Sarah, Mitchell of the cargo ship New Horizons, had lost her entire family when Meridian's safety inspectors condemned their homestead colony as uninhabitable. Commander David Park of the armed merchant vessel Iron Will had been blacklisted from hegemony space for refusing to transport slaves disguised as indentured workers. Each crew had their own story of injustice and abandonment. But what impressed Zara most was watching these disparate groups come together with military efficiency under Captain Chen's leadership. Years of being dismissed and marginalized by galactic society had forged the scattered human settlements into something approaching a unified force. Dr. Kim established a temporary medical facility to treat survivors from other Meridian incidents, people who had been quietly relocated to Haven over the years. Elder Kresh worked with linguists to document testimonies from dozens of different species, building an airtight case against the corporation. Meanwhile, Chief Engineer Williams collaborated with technical specialists from across the fleet to analyze Meridian's sabotage techniques. What they discovered was a pattern of systematic terrorism, disguised as industrial accidents, stretching back nearly a decade. "They're not just stealing mining rights," Williams reported during a strategy meeting. "They're deliberately targeting multi-species colonies and operations. The goal seems to be driving non-human populations away from resource-rich systems. Ethnic cleansing with corporate letterhead," the broker observed grimly. "Meridian's board of directors are all from core world human supremacist groups. They want to establish humanity as the dominant force in this sector, but they're using the worst possible methods." Captain Chen's expression was thunderous. "They're not human as far as I'm concerned. Humans protect each other, and anyone else who needs protection. These people are parasites wearing our species' name." The plan that emerged from their deliberations was audaciously simple. Rather than attempting a direct military assault on Meridian's facilities, they would expose the corporation's crimes to the galactic community in a way that couldn't be ignored or suppressed. The key was the abandoned hegemony communication relay at the edge of the system. If they could seize control of it and broadcast their evidence across multiple sectors simultaneously, even Meridian's political connections wouldn't be able to contain the scandal. "It's a suicide mission," Commander Park pointed out during the final planning session. "That relay is protected by automated defense systems and a small hegemony garrison. Even if we take it, they'll send a fleet to retake it within hours." "Then we'll have to make those hours count," Chen replied. "Elena, what's our timeline for the broadcast?" "If everything goes perfectly, 30 minutes to upload and transmit all the evidence. 45 minutes to ensure it reaches news services across the core worlds." Zara found herself volunteering to join the assault team, despite her lack of military training. "These people murdered my husband and tried to murder my daughter. I need to be there when we make them pay." Chen studied her for a long moment. "It's going to be dangerous. Everything worthwhile is dangerous. Besides, someone needs to speak for the victims, and I'm one of the few survivors who saw everything." As the fleet prepared to depart Frontier Haven, Zara stood in the Defiance's observation deck watching the other ships take formation around them. 17 vessels of various sizes and configurations, crewed by humans who had been written off by galactic society as irrelevant outcasts. Mira joined her at the viewport, now healthy and strong thanks to Dr. Kim's care. "Mama, are we going to win?" Zara considered the question seriously. "I don't know, sweetheart. But we're going to try, and sometimes trying is the most important thing you can do." Outside, the stars beckoned like distant beacons of hope. In a few hours, they would either strike a blow for justice that would echo across the galaxy, or they would die in the attempt. But for the first time since her husband's death, Zara felt truly alive. The humans had shown her that some things were worth fighting for, even against impossible odds. Now it was time to show the galaxy what happened when ordinary people refused to accept that evil was simply the price of civilization. The hegemony communication relay appeared on their screens like a metallic spiderweb, stretched across the void, its massive dish arrays and transmission towers bristling with defensive weaponry. The facility orbited a dead moon at the edge of the Arcturus system, far from civilian traffic but perfectly positioned to monitor communications across 3 sectors. Captain Chen studied the tactical display with the focused intensity of a predator sizing up its prey. Intelligence reports indicated a garrison of 30 hegemony security personnel, plus automated defense systems capable of destroying small fleets. Under normal circumstances, attacking such a facility would be considered an act of war. Remember, we're not here to start a revolution. Chen addressed the assembled fleet commanders via secure channel. We're here to expose the truth. Fast in, fast out. Minimum casualties on all sides. Commander Park's voice crackled through the communication system from the Iron Will. Marcus, they're going to shoot first and ask questions later. That facility has standing orders to defend against any unauthorized approach. Then, we'll have to make sure our approach is very convincing. The plan relied on misdirection and speed rather than overwhelming firepower. 3 ships would create a diversion on the facility's far side, drawing the attention of its defensive systems. Meanwhile, the remaining 14 vessels would approach from the moon's shadow, using its gravitational field to mask their heat signatures. Zara found herself assigned to the Defiance's auxiliary bridge, helping Communications Officer Thompson prepare the evidence packages for transmission. Terabytes of data had been compiled into an irrefutable case against Meridian Corporation, complete with geological surveys, financial records, and survivor testimonies. 37 different mining incidents across 12 systems, Thompson reported as she organized the files. Over 800 confirmed deaths, thousands more displaced. The evidence is overwhelming. Will it be enough to bring them down? Zara asked. Depends on how fast we can get it out there. Once this information hits the galactic news feeds, even Meridian's political connections won't be able to contain the scandal. The attack began at precisely 800 ship time. Captain Mitchell's New Horizons and 2 escort vessels emerged from hyperspace directly above the relay facility, broadcasting false distress signals and emergency landing requests. As predicted, the automated defenses immediately focused on what appeared to be the primary threat. Energy beams lanced through space as the relay's weapon systems engaged the decoy ships. Mitchell's crews performed their roles perfectly, dodging and weaving through the defensive fire while making their vessels appear critically damaged. To the facility's sensors, it looked like a desperate group of refugees seeking sanctuary. Meanwhile, Chen's main force approached from the moon's dark side, their ships running silent and cold to avoid detection. The Defiance led the formation, its advanced stealth systems rendering it nearly invisible against the cosmic background radiation. 60 seconds to docking, Rodriguez reported from the weapons console. Defense grid is still focused on the decoys. Through the viewport, Zara could see the relay's docking bay growing larger. Emergency lights flashed as the facility's automated systems tried to coordinate responses to multiple apparent threats. The confusion was exactly what they needed. The docking procedure happened with military precision. Magnetic clamps engaged with barely a vibration, and the airlock seals activated automatically. Within moments, Chen's assault team was boarding the facility through 3 different access points. The hegemony security forces were professional but unprepared for what they faced. Most had expected their careers to involve monitoring communications and occasionally dealing with smugglers. They had never trained for an assault by motivated humans with superior tactical coordination. The fighting was brief and decisive. Chen's teams used non-lethal weapons whenever possible, stunning rather than killing their opponents. The goal was justice, not revenge, and unnecessary bloodshed would only undermine their cause when the recordings were inevitably reviewed by galactic authorities. Control room secured. Chen's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. Thompson, you're clear to begin transmission. Zara followed the communications officer through the facility's corridors, which were now filled with smoke and the acrid smell of discharged energy weapons. Hegemony personnel sat under guard, looking more confused than frightened as they tried to understand why humans had attacked a military installation. The relay's main communication center was a marvel of galactic technology, its banks of quantum processors capable of routing messages across thousands of light-years instantaneously. Thompson worked with practiced efficiency, interfacing her portable equipment with the facility's transmission arrays. "First data package uploading," she announced, targeting major news services across the core worlds. Through the facility's viewports, Zara could see the diversion fleet still dancing around the defensive systems, drawing fire away from the main operation. But she also noticed new contacts appearing on the long-range sensors, ships moving toward their position from deeper in the system. "Chen to all units." The captain's voice carried a note of urgency. "Hegemony patrol fleet incoming. EDA 15 minutes. How's our progress, Thompson?" 40% uploaded. "I need at least 20 more minutes for the complete evidence package." "We don't have 20 minutes." Elder Kresh appeared beside Zara, having insisted on joining the mission despite his advanced age. The elderly Zelani moved with surprising agility as he studied the tactical displays. "Captain," he said, activating his communicator, "my people have a saying, better to light one candle than curse the darkness. Upload what you can now, and trust that it will be enough." Thompson's fingers flew across her control interface as she prioritized the most damaging evidence. Geological surveys from the Kepler system, financial records showing Meridian's systematic acquisition of abandoned facilities, and most importantly, video testimonies from survivors across multiple incidents. "Core evidence package transmitted," she reported, now broadcasting to secondary targets. The approaching hegemony fleet appeared on their screens as a constellation of angry red dots. 8 ships, including 2 heavy cruisers, moving at maximum acceleration toward the relay facility. Even with their head start, Chen's fleet would be overtaken before they could reach the hyperspace jump point. "All ships, prepare for emergency departure," Chen ordered. "We've done what we came to do." But as the human fleet began undocking from the relay facility, something unexpected happened. The facility's communication arrays began receiving incoming transmissions from across the galaxy, so many that the quantum processors started overheating from the load. "Captain," Thompson's voice was filled with wonder, "the news feeds are picking up our transmission. Major networks across 12 sectors are requesting confirmation and additional information." On the facility's main display, galactic news channels were already broadcasting preliminary reports about the Meridian Corporation scandal. Headlines scrolled across multiple languages. "Corporate murder exposed. Mining colony massacre revealed. Human fleet strikes back at corporate terrorism." The reaction was immediate and explosive. Within minutes, Meridian's stock price was plummeting on exchanges across civilized space. Political leaders who had accepted corporate donations were scrambling to distance themselves from the scandal. Most importantly, other mining colonies were coming forward with their own stories of suspicious accidents and forced evacuations. "Chen to fleet." The captain's voice carried a note of amazement. "Looks like we lit more than one candle, Elder Kresh. The whole galaxy is starting to pay attention." The approaching hegemony patrol fleet suddenly found itself in an impossible position. They had been dispatched to stop what appeared to be a terrorist attack on a military facility. But the attackers had just exposed one of the most significant corporate scandals in galactic history. Any aggressive action against the human fleet would now be viewed by billions of citizens as an attempt to suppress the truth. "Hegemony patrol leader to human vessels," a voice crackled over the open channel. "You are ordered to surrender for questioning regarding your attack on this facility." Captain Chen's response was broadcast on the same frequency, ensuring it would be recorded by every news service monitoring the situation. "Patrol leader, we have committed no crimes except exposing the truth about corporate murder. Our evidence speaks for itself, and we will submit to proper legal proceedings through neutral courts. You attacked a military installation. We used minimum force to access communication equipment that your superiors were preventing us from using through proper channels. No one was seriously injured, and we are prepared to compensate the hegemony for any damage to their facility." As the human fleet departed the relay facility, they were followed by the patrol ships but not fired upon. The political situation had shifted too dramatically for hasty military action. Within hours, emergency sessions were being called in legislative bodies across the galaxy. 6 months after the relay incident, Zara stood before the Galactic Justice Tribunal on Nexus Prime, the neutral space station that served as the galaxy's highest court. The massive chamber was filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds, their various forms and features creating a tapestry of galactic civilization, That would have been unimaginable. Just a year ago, the trial of Meridian Corporation had become the most watched legal proceeding in galactic history. News networks broadcast every session to billions of citizens across civilized space, while protesters gathered outside the station demanding justice for the victims of corporate terrorism. "State your name for the record," requested Chief Justice Valdris, an ancient Etherian whose species had served as neutral arbitrators for millennia. Zara Thorne, formerly of Mining Platform 7, Kepler 442b system. Her testimony had been scheduled for the trial's final week. After months of expert witnesses, financial analysts, and corporate executives had painted a detailed picture of Meridian's crimes. But Zara's words carried special weight because she spoke not just as a survivor, but as a representative of the 800 confirmed victims who would never have their day in court. "Mrs. Thorne, please tell the tribunal what happened to your husband." Zara had practiced this moment countless times, but standing before the galaxy's highest court still felt surreal. Doran was a good man who believed in honest work. He died because someone decided that killing miners was cheaper than paying them fair wages for dangerous work. The defense attorney, a slick human corporate lawyer named Hartwell, had spent weeks trying to characterize the mining accidents as tragic but unavoidable incidents. His strategy crumbled when faced with the overwhelming evidence compiled by Chen's people. But he still attempted to minimize Meridian's culpability. "Mrs. Thorne, isn't it possible that these incidents were genuinely accidental? Mining is inherently dangerous work. Mr. Hartwell, I've been around mining operations my entire adult life. I know the difference between an accident and sabotage. The explosive charges didn't place themselves in those cavern walls." Elder Kresh testified next, his dignity and gravitas lending additional weight to the prosecution's case. The elderly Zalani spoke in measured tones about the systematic nature of Meridian's operations, how they specifically targeted colonies with mixed populations and limited political influence. They preyed upon the vulnerable, he concluded, communities that lacked the resources to fight back or seek justice through conventional channels. Captain Chen's testimony created a sensation when he detailed the rescue operations and the conditions they had found on the abandoned platforms. His matter-of-fact recounting of human suffering drew gasps from the gallery and visible reactions from several tribunal members. "Captain Chen," Chief Justice Valdris asked, "what motivated you to risk your life and the lives of your crew for people you had never met?" Chen's answer was simple and devastating. "Your Honor, my species has a saying. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. We couldn't live with ourselves if we had done nothing." The prosecution's case was bolstered by an unexpected ally. Dr. Amanda Reeves, Meridian's former chief safety inspector, had come forward with internal corporate documents proving that company executives knew their operations were causing mass casualties. "I tried to report the pattern through proper channels," she testified, her voice shaking with emotion. "My supervisors told me to focus on productivity metrics and ignore casualty statistics. When I persisted, they terminated my employment and had me blacklisted from the industry." The documents she provided were damning. Internal memos discussed acceptable loss rates and population displacement strategies. One particularly chilling email from Meridian's CEO referred to the Kepler incident as a successful test of our enhanced extraction protocols. But the trial's most powerful moment came when Mira took the witness stand. At 9 years old, she was the youngest person ever to testify before the Galactic Justice Tribunal, and her words carried an innocence that cut through all the legal maneuvering and corporate double-talk. "The humans saved us when everyone else said we were cursed," she said in her clear, small voice. "My papa died because bad people wanted to steal our home." Captain Chen and his friends stopped them. Justice Valdris leaned forward, his ancient face gentle as he addressed the child. "Mira, do you understand what this trial is about? It's about making sure the bad people can't hurt more families like mine." The defense's case collapsed entirely when the broker provided evidence that Meridian had attempted to hire mercenaries to attack refugee settlements across the Outer Rim. Corporate executives who had maintained their innocence throughout the trial were arrested in open court as additional charges were filed. When the tribunal recessed for deliberation, Zara found herself in the station's observation deck, watching ships arrive and depart from the massive docking bays. The view reminded her of her first glimpse of the Defiance approaching Kepler Station, and how that moment had changed everything. Captain Chen joined her at the viewport, looking tired but satisfied. "How are you holding up?" "Better than I expected. For months I thought justice was impossible. Now it feels inevitable. That's because the galaxy is paying attention. When people see what's really happening, most of them want to do the right thing." The verdict came 3 days later. Chief Justice Valdris read the tribunal's decision in a voice that carried across the chamber and to billions of citizens watching throughout civilized space. The tribunal finds Meridian Corporation guilty of genocide, corporate terrorism, and crimes against sentience. The company's assets are hereby seized for victim compensation, and its executives are sentenced to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. The chamber erupted in cheers, but Valdris continued speaking. "Furthermore, this tribunal finds that the human rescue fleet acted within the bounds of galactic law in exposing these crimes. Their actions represent the highest ideals of interspecies cooperation and justice. The aftermath of the trial transformed galactic politics in ways no one had anticipated. The Human Alliance, an organization that had existed only informally among the scattered Rim colonies, was officially recognized as a sovereign government with full diplomatic status. Captain Chen found himself appointed as humanity's first ambassador to the Galactic Council. But perhaps the most significant change was in how the galaxy viewed the concept of corporate responsibility. New laws were passed requiring independent oversight of all mining operations, with severe penalties for companies that prioritize profits over worker safety. Zara accepted a position as director of the new Victim Advocacy Office, a position that allowed her to help other survivors of corporate crimes seek justice. Mira started school on Nexus Prime, where children from hundreds of worlds learned together in an environment that celebrated diversity rather than merely tolerating it. On quiet evenings, Zara would sometimes stand at her apartment window and watch the ships in the harbor, remembering the day when humanity had found her in the darkness. The humans had saved her life, but more importantly, they had shown her that ordinary people could change the galaxy when they refused to accept injustice as inevitable. The curse of Kepler 442b had been broken not by supernatural forces, but by people who believed that everyone deserved a chance to live with dignity and hope. It was a lesson the galaxy would not soon forget, and one that would echo through the stars for generations to come. Elder Kresh often visited their new home, sharing stories of his people's ancient traditions while marveling at the changes sweeping across civilized space. "The humans have given us something precious," he would tell Mira. "They have shown us that heroes are not born. They are made by the choices they make when faced with evil." As Zara tucked her daughter into bed each night, she would look up at the stars and think about her husband, hoping that somehow he knew their sacrifice had not been in vain. The galaxy was becoming a better place, one rescue at a time, one act of courage at a time. The humans had kept their promise. No one got left behind. 10 years had passed since the Meridian trials, and the galaxy bore little resemblance to the corporate-dominated civilization that had once left civilians to die on cursed worlds. Zara stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Humanitarian Response Center, watching rescue fleets depart for disaster zones across 3 sectors. The center, built in orbit around Nexus Prime, served as the coordination hub for what had become known as the Galactic Rescue Alliance. Ships bearing the insignia of dozens of species worked together to respond to emergencies that once would have been ignored by the major governments and corporations. "Mom, the Kepler Memorial dedication is starting," Mira called from across the deck. At 19, she had grown into a confident young woman who served as a junior coordinator for rescue operations. Her specialty was communications with isolated colonies, a skill that had proven invaluable in reaching communities that had lost faith in outside help. The memorial ceremony was being broadcast live from the former mining platform that had once been their prison. Platform 7 had been transformed into a monument, honoring the victims of corporate terrorism. But more importantly, it served as a training facility for rescue personnel from across the galaxy. Captain Chen, now Admiral Chen of the Human Alliance fleet, spoke at the dedication via holographic link from his flagship. His hair had gone gray over the years, but his eyes still burned with the same determination that had saved them a decade ago. "We gather today not just to remember the dead, but to celebrate the living proof that ordinary people can change the galaxy when they refused to accept injustice as inevitable, he said, his words carrying across space to millions of viewers. The memorial wall displayed the names of everyone who had died in Meridian's operations, but it also included the names of those who had been saved. Zara's and Mira's names were there, along with hundreds of others whose lives had been transformed by the simple act of refusing to give up on the abandoned Elder Kresh, now in his 80s but still sharp as a plasma cutter, had become something of a galactic celebrity. His memoirs about the rescue operations were required reading in schools across civilized space, and his speeches about interspecies cooperation drew crowds wherever he traveled. "The humans taught us that rescue is not just about saving lives," he said during his dedication speech. "It is about saving the idea that every life has value, regardless of species, social status, or economic utility." The changes had not come easily. The old corporate powers had fought back viciously, hiring mercenaries and attempting to destabilize the new order through economic warfare and political sabotage. But they had underestimated the power of the story that emerged from Kepler 442b. The tale of the widow and child who waited for salvation, and the humans who answered their call, had become a legend that transcended species barriers. Children across the galaxy grew up hearing about Captain Chen and his crew, about the courage it took to enter cursed space and challenge impossible odds. More importantly, they learned that heroes were not mythical figures from ancient stories, but ordinary people who chose to act when action was needed. The legend had inspired a generation of young beings to pursue careers in rescue work, disaster relief, and humanitarian service. The Galactic Rescue Alliance now operated over 300 ships, staffed by volunteers from every major species. They responded to natural disasters, industrial accidents, and political emergencies with a speed and efficiency that the old corporate-dominated system could never have achieved. Dr. Kim, now Director of Medical Services for the Alliance, had established trauma treatment centers specifically designed for survivors of corporate crimes. Her research into the psychological effects of abandonment had revolutionized how the galaxy dealt with disaster victims. "The most important thing we learned," she often told new medical personnel, "is that rescue doesn't end when you get people to safety. True rescue means helping them rebuild their lives and find hope again." The success of the Alliance had even transformed humanity's reputation in galactic society. Once viewed as dangerous death-world barbarians, humans were now seen as the galaxy's conscience, the species that consistently chose compassion over profit. But the real measure of their success could be seen in the smaller stories that rarely made galactic news. Mining colonies that reported safety violations without fear of corporate retaliation, refugee families who knew there would always be someone willing to help them find new homes. Children who grew up believing that the galaxy was fundamentally just because they had seen justice triumph over evil. Zara's own life had become a testament to the power of second chances. Her work at the Victim Advocacy Office had helped thousands of survivors seek justice and rebuild their lives. She had remarried to a human engineer named David who shared her passion for helping others. Together they had adopted 3 children orphaned by various corporate disasters. But perhaps the most significant change was in Mira herself. The frightened child who had once faced starvation on a dying space station had grown into a leader who inspired others to believe in the possibility of positive change. "I want to join the rescue fleet," Mira announced during a family dinner on the anniversary of their rescue. "Captain Zhang is assembling a new squadron to patrol the Outer Rim, looking for communities that might need help." Zara felt a familiar mixture of pride and fear. The rescue fleets were dangerous work, often operating in hostile territory where corporate remnants still posed threats. But she also knew that her daughter had inherited something precious from her ordeal, an unshakable belief that no one should face darkness alone. "Your father would be proud," Zara said finally. Both of them would be. The anniversary celebration concluded with a moment of silence for all those who had been lost, followed by a renewed pledge to continue the work of rescue and justice. As the various ceremonies ended and normal operations resumed, Zara found herself thinking about the strange turns her life had taken. She had started as a simple miner's wife on a forgotten world, become a survivor of corporate terrorism, and eventually transformed into an advocate for justice whose work affected lives across the galaxy. But the most important lesson she had learned was the simplest one: that ordinary people could accomplish extraordinary things when they refused to accept that suffering was inevitable. The curse of Kepler 442b had been broken by humans who believed that everyone deserved a chance at life and hope. That belief had spread across the galaxy like a contagion of compassion, transforming entire civilizations and proving that the fundamental nature of sentient beings was not greed or cruelty, but in deep-seated desire to help each other survive and thrive. As Zara prepared for sleep in her comfortable apartment overlooking the bustling rescue operations center, she could hear the sounds of ships launching on new missions. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, people were facing their own moments of despair and abandonment, but they would not face them alone. The galaxy had learned the most important lesson humanity had to teach: that rescue was not just a profession or a duty, but a sacred promise that every life mattered, that no one would be left behind, and that hope would always find a way to reach those who needed it most. The humans had kept their word, and in doing so, they had shown the galaxy how to keep faith with itself. It was a legacy that would endure long after the last star burned out. A reminder that the greatest power in the universe was not technology or wealth, but the simple decision to care about the welfare of others. In the end, that was what it truly meant to be human. Not the ability to survive on death worlds or fight impossible odds, but the refusal to accept that anyone should have to face the darkness alone. It was a gift they had given to the galaxy, and one that would continue to shine long after their names were forgotten. The rescue would continue, one life at a time, one act of courage at a time, until every corner of the galaxy knew that someone was always listening for their call for help. And when that call came, the answer would always be the same: "We're coming, hold on, you're not alone."